From the sports betting capital of the world, Las Vegas, it's time for the show you can't afford to miss. The #1 weekly football preview, Wanna Bet. Get ready for valuable information, analysis, winning picks, and betting strategies. Your hosts, SEC gridiron guru Kip Keefer, and award-winning betting expert, writer, and sports editor for the Las Vegas Sun, Case Keefer. Let's go. Here's everything you need to win big. Wanna Bet.
Welcome, everybody, to Wanna Bet from Las Vegas. Kip Keefer, Case Keefer, ready to bring you all of the information going on this New Year's weekend, and what a sensational one it is for football fans. Case 2023 is coming in with a real bang if you're into football.
Yeah, always a great year. Great way to start the new year, if you're a football fan, you got the NFL winding down. You're kind of seeing who are going to be the major players. We think we have an idea of how the playoffs are going to play out. And then, of course, college football down to 4 teams. Still have some other bowl games to sort through, but getting fired up for the playoff. And it's just a great way to ring in the new year. Can't wait to see what I think we've been working on for months, how it plays out.
Well, the last day of 2022 is not going to go quietly. We've got a whole schedule of games, starting off with the Sugar Bowl. Alabama playing against Kansas State down in New Orleans. And the big announcement on that game that affected you positively, Bryce Young and Will Anderson, the 2 superstar Alabama players, have shocked everybody and decided to play in this game and not bypass it for the NFL draft.
Yeah, well, hopefully you followed the show, because I think it was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. The first bowl play I gave out was Alabama minus 3.5 when it dipped down that low. And I can't say that I knew those guys were coming back, but it was kind of part of the handicap that, it was all kind of speculative of who Alabama wouldn't have. We didn't know for sure, and it still felt like they'd have enough talent one way or the other to kind of be able to overwhelm Kansas State. Now, nothing's guaranteed. The Wildcats have been really strong all year, but certainly a big move in my direction. Now you have that at 6 or even 6.5, where we bet at minus 3.5 on the show. So hopefully you took the advice, and we're sitting pretty with some line value heading into the Sugar Bowl.
Well, you've heard Case all year emphasize how critical it is to get in early when you see a perhaps advantageous line. This is probably the prime example I can think of where the line has doubled in your favor since you got in early. That's a pretty remarkable move.
Yeah, we'll take it. Doesn't guarantee victory, of course, but that's what you're looking for, and excited to start off a good day of football by seeing what happens down there in New Orleans.
Well, let's pivot to the college football playoff, because after much speculation, we have the 4 teams, of course. It will be TCU in Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl in Arizona, and then in Atlanta, Georgia and Ohio State square off in the 2 semifinal games. And you're going to give your picks, I know, in the next segment, but I kind of want to know just what your basic overview of these 4 teams and these particular matchups are.
Well, I'm ready to be let down again. I think ever since we've had the college football playoff, we've never had 2 great semifinals, as exciting as this was to have 4 teams included. It's always been at least one blowout. Sometimes both games have been unimpressive. But, this year is kind of making me think maybe we can get 2 good games for once. I mean, certainly this shapes up a lot better than last year, where Alabama was a 2-touchdown favorite over Cincinnati, and I believe Georgia was, almost pushing 10 at kickoff against Michigan. We saw neither of those games turned out all that competitive. Both these lines are around a touchdown, and I really think there's a route to both of them being competitive. It hasn't happened so far, and, you probably bet against at least one of them not getting out of hand, but I'd be pretty shocked if they're both blowouts. I think we get at least one really good game on New Year's Eve in the college football playoff, and personally, I think this shapes up the best it's been in many years, where we could possibly have 2 really good games to feast on before the national championship.
Well, I get the feeling a lot of people are kind of expecting Michigan to walk over TCU. That would be a mistake, I think, and I think you think the same way.
Yeah, I bet TCU +8. That being said, if you made me say one of the 2 games is going to be a blowout, maybe this goes against conventional wisdom. I do think there's probably a better path towards Michigan blowing out TCU than a blowout in the other game. A lot of what we've seen in these spots is, kind of the more spunky team that came out of nowhere, that's kind of at a personnel disadvantage, just gets beaten down by, a team of blue chippers and 5 stars with, multi-million-dollar coaching staffs that have have worked so hard for weeks. And if you're making a case for Michigan, I think that's what you're saying, that we've seen it before. I think Michigan clearly has the better players here, has the better program. That's not to take anything away from the Horned Frogs. They've been great all year. I think Sonny Dykes is an underrated coach, but I do believe that there's a path, to Michigan being able to do that. TCU, on the other hand, they've done so well all year that they've improved, and even the game against Kansas State in the Big 12 championship where they finally lost, they were 1 yard away from winning. So if they do what they've done all year, follow that script, I think it's going to be a close game, but there is a possible Michigan blowout, but I'm hoping it goes the opposite way.
Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Georgia plays their third game this year at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, almost as many as the Falcons. It's kind of remarkable, and they've scored 99 points in 2 games. So do you give any consideration to that factor, that it's a very comfortable environment for the Bulldogs, who are still a healthy favorite, albeit only 6.5, which is really low for a Georgia game in the last couple of years? Yeah, I certainly think they deserve like a semi-home advantage for that. Like you said, played there. This will be for the third time this year, and they've played there several years in a row now. It's going to be a partisan crowd, although I'm sure Ohio State's going to travel well as well, but I think anything less than 60-40 Georgia would be shocking. Certainly that they deserve a point or maybe a 1.5 adjustment for that semi-home field. And you look at the line, before what happened with Ohio State and Michigan, this was shaping up to be about Georgia 3.5, 4, absolutely maximum. Now 6.5. You start doing the math, you got to adjust a little bit based on what happened against Ohio State and Michigan, where they got beat pretty badly in the end. I think lost by 3 touchdowns. And then you add in another point or 1.5 for home field advantage. This line looks, to me, exactly where it should be. I haven't made a bet on this spread. You can stick around my segment, see if I change my mind. I don't really see one. I think it's about right. And I think a factor that maybe some people don't see, I do believe Georgia deserves a little bit of a boost for getting to play in Atlanta. From a Vegas standpoint, I know a lot of people have reacted like I have to this. One of the most surprising things I've seen is the speculation of the 2 teams that emerged victorious this weekend playing in the finals and what the prospective lines on those matchups would be. The Georgia ones are pretty much in line with what you'd expect, but I was stunned to see that here in Vegas, the early projections would be Ohio State a 3 to 3.5 point favorite after losing by 25 points at home to Michigan just a couple of weeks ago. How do you explain that phenomenon? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. I think it just goes back to something we've probably talked about on the show a lot, is just people remember what they saw last, and we saw Ohio State get beaten pretty badly by Michigan. But I don't know, if you look closer at that game, Ohio State did control a lot of it. Michigan started to catch them off guard in the second half, and things just kind of spiraled out of control. Was it a true 25-point margin? To me, probably not. And also, we have a whole lot of data points. Michigan's played 13 games this year. Ohio State's played 12. So that's just one little piece of the pie. And throughout the rest of the year, it looked like Ohio State was the better team. It looked like they were the better team coming in with their talent level. You look at some of the common opponents, Ohio State handled them a lot better. I actually think there's been quite a big move here. If you think from the perspective that Ohio State was an 8-point favorite in that game, now if they play again at a neutral site, it could be as low as 3. That's a big move in Michigan's favor. I mean, 5 points, I think that's about right. And everything could change depending on how the semifinals go. Say Michigan just blows out TCU and Ohio State barely slips by Georgia, you're going to see some change. But to me, there's no doubt in my mind that if my life depended on it, I had to pick one team to win a game now. Despite what happened at the end, I still think Ohio State's a little bit better, so they should be a slight favorite in that prospective matchup. Well, it's going to be great, and let's hope that the semifinal games deliver 2 great games, which we all would really enjoy as 2022 goes out with a bang. 2023, the next day, this coming Sunday, the NFL is really in the home stretch now, down to just their last couple weeks of a just seemingly endless 18-week schedule, and some interesting games and still a lot of things happening. But so far, as we speak today in the AFC, it looks like the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals are the cream of the crop. But you think there might be a couple sleepers lurking in the weeds? Yeah, I mean, I still think the Chiefs and the Bills are the safest ones you can go with. I think they're the 2 best teams. The Bills, I have a little attrition on defense, though, really beaten up. The Chiefs, same way. You don't really trust their defense. They are healthy. But, look, this point last year, no one was talking about the Bengals making a run to the Super Bowl, and you saw what happened. A lot of people are saying the Jaguars this year or last year's Bengals, which makes a lot of sense to me. They look like they have their stuff together. They're really going on a run here. The Chargers are finally healthy. They look good. I'd watch out for the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. I feel like they don't get enough credit. So I think the
AFC is still relatively open. I'm ultimately hoping it's the Chiefs, and I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about the NFC, but I think it's going to be the Eagles or the Cowboys in the NFC. I don't trust Brock Purdy to win 3 straight games. From a future bet perspective, I'm hoping it's some of those teams I just mentioned. I'd love to see the Eagles in there on some long prices. I think they are the best team as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy, so hopefully we see a little bit of chalk in Chiefs-Eagles in the Super Bowl.
Well, Happy New Year indeed, football fans. It's going to be a football extravaganza all weekend long. We hope you enjoy every minute of it. When we come back, Case is going to tell you specifically who he likes this week in both college action and the NFL. You're watching Wanna Bet. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Case Keefer back with my best bets this week on Wanna Bet. Going to go as quickly as possible. Got 4 college football plays for you and 4 NFL plays. We will start in college as always, where of course we already have 2 plays pending that we booked as soon as the bowl slate was announced. Alabama minus 3.5 in the Sugar Bowl, and then in the college football playoff, TCU plus 8. Certainly seems like we have a good value on the Crimson Tide after all the extra help they're getting. That move was largely thinking that no one would be playing. They'd have a lot of opt-outs, but it's been quite the opposite. Lost some guys to the transfer portal, but of course the biggest names on the team will be there, so happy to have 3.5 with them against the Wildcats. TCU I'm a little more waffling on. If you can probably put 2 and 2 together from the opening segment. Technically, that plus 8 is a good price right now. Michigan holding is a 7.5 point favorite as of recording time. But talking with some people that I would consider smarter than me and bigger bettors than me, thought this number was a little low, and maybe this ends up closing a little bit higher. Certainly, I think there's a way that Michigan could win this game relatively easily, but I'm not backing off of it. That's not how this works. You make a bet, you stick with it. I'm not going to be buying off TCU or anything either. They've been pretty phenomenal all year, so hopefully they can do it again. I'm just probably not as confident as TCU plus 8 as I was when I first bet it. But let's get to the other 4 bets. Since we have a bet on that first semifinal game, of course we got to go with the second. I really don't have much of an opinion on the Ohio State-Georgia spread, but what I do like is there are still some sports books that have 63 as the total, and I am going to go under on that. I think this Georgia defense, I've heard, taken some heat for their performance in the SEC championship against LSU, but I feel like a lot of the yards they gave up were late in the game when the game was decided. Not really a concern for me. I've heard so many people say, oh, well, there's questions about this defensive backfield, but there's really not in my mind. When they've needed to, they've stepped up. I don't think it's going to be easy for Ohio State to move the ball. And the Buckeyes, on the other hand, I think with their new defensive coordinator they got from Oklahoma State this year, Coach Knowles, they had been so much better all year. I thought they were trending in the right direction, and then Michigan just really caught them off guard. I think Michigan threw a whole lot of different stuff at them that they weren't expecting in that game that they lost their last time out. I don't really think they're as bad as they've shown, and I think this line is a big reaction to that. Michigan really, had a more explosive offense than we've seen most of the year, was throwing downfield a little bit more, and of course those opened up those huge running lanes for Edwards that he took advantage of late. So I think 63 is very generous. I think this, the highest possible scenario I'm seeing here is something like 31-30 or 31-27. That's still under the total. I think under 63 is a safe play there. Then past the college football playoff, let's go to Raymond James Stadium and the ReliaQuest Bowl. I'm going to take Mississippi State right now. I'll pick them with Illinois. I think the Bulldogs just have a lot more talent here. I do think they'll be motivated to go out and win one for the late Mike Leach, rest in peace. Of course, he changed the game in college football. Illinois' defense was great all year, but they've had 2 opt-outs to go into the NFL draft, their 2 best defensive backs. So I don't think they're necessarily ready for what the Bulldogs are going to do here. I'll take Mississippi State at a pick. And then 2 of the other big games, the New Year's Six Bowls we'll finish off with here. I can't believe you can still get Tulane at plus 2.5 against USC. Now, I know this will end up looking very foolish if the Heisman winner, Caleb Williams, does play, as he has apparently intimated to people that he plans to do, but I just have a hard time believing he's going to play in this game. So many of his weapons are out, some to injury, some just opting out, including Mario Addison. I just don't think you risk, your franchise quarterback, for the lack of a better word, who has to come back next year, who's dealing with that hamstring injury that we saw him hobbling around in the Pac-12 championship. I think eventually He won't be playing here, and if he's not playing, this is a really even game. And even, when you take into account the opt-outs, I think Tulane might be the better team. I wouldn't mind sprinkling some money line. I'm going to go with Tulane plus 2.5 in the Cotton Bowl, and then to finish things off in the Rose Bowl, I'm surprised Utah has held as a favorite here. I'm really impressed with Penn State. I think they kind of were overshadowed this year by Michigan and Ohio State, who both had their way with them, but I think it really was a big three in the Big Ten this year. It's too bad they were all three in the same division. I think Penn State's a better team than Utah, so I guess I'm picking on the Pac-12. Didn't even make that connection until now, but I'm going to go with Penn State plus 2.5 to go along with Tulane plus 2.5. Georgia and Ohio State under 63, and Mississippi State pick 'em. 25, 24, and 1 on the year in college football. Been a little bit of a frustrating season. Thank God we've had some of those futures to save us and boost up the bankroll. It's been a better year in the NFL on the show. I'm 29, 21, and 1 so far, so 58%. We will certainly take that and some big futures pending. I believe I gave out Patrick Mahomes 10-1 on the show, Nick Bosa 7-1 to win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year award, respectively. I think also I gave out Sauce Gardner at 22-1 to win Rookie of the Year after a little bit of a slow start, Defensive Rookie of the Year, that is. So if you hit all those three, they're all gigantic favorites now. Hopefully you followed me on those. But this week, the 4 plays, let's start in Green Bay, where the Packers are a 3-point favorite to the Vikings. And I think this line doesn't have enough recency baked in there. We rode the Packers last week. It was an easy win, and I'm going to ride them again here. I just think the Packers have been better than the Vikings lately. The Vikings getting all these miracle wins. Justin Jefferson has been phenomenal. Big fan of his. I actually have him offensive Player of the Year. I don't think I gave that out on the show, but I held Kip across state lines in Arizona a month before the season to bet that one, so hopefully that comes in as well. But Green Bay's defense has been great over the last month. This is really what they expected to build their team around this year, to kind of carry them while the offense figured it out. And I think the offense is kind of now figuring out. You've seen what Christian Watson has done. Aaron Rodgers finally has a rapport with some of these guys. I think they beat Minnesota at home. And from one disappointing team with a veteran quarterback to another, both laying 3, I'm going to take the Buccaneers -3. Hosting the Panthers. I know the Buccaneers have been the worst team against the spread in the NFL this year, probably the most disappointing team in the NFL, but there's just such a talent discrepancy here everywhere except the offensive line, where I know the Buccaneers are still hurting, but they've got such good defensive players, so many playmakers. If they're just marginally better in the red zone than they have been all year, I wouldn't be surprised if they win this game by double digits. So give me Tampa Bay -3, 2 underdogs to finish us off. Seattle +1.5 hosting the Jets. I think Seattle deserves a little bit of a bigger boost for home field advantage here. It's always tough to go up there and play. I think they get it done outright here. I'm kind of surprised that they were pushed to the underdog. I think people might be giving Mike White too much credit as the Jets quarterback. Certainly a better option than Zach Wilson, but he's no world beater in my mind. And then finally, we're going to bet against the Eagles, something we haven't done all year for the second straight week. I don't think this is the same team without Jalen Hurts, even though they had a good showing against the Cowboys. I'm going to take the Saints +6. The Saints defense has all the pieces, and certainly seems like it's finally coming together here at the end of the season. I don't necessarily think they win this game, and they've lost some just horrendous games to kind of be out of position, unless the Panthers beat the Buccaneers, which I don't expect. But I think they get it done here. I think that they get after Gardner Minshew. So give me New Orleans +6 to go with Seattle +1.5, Tampa Bay -3, and Green Bay -3. Stick around for Kip's picks next.
Hey everybody, Kip Keefer with you now for the SEC segment here on Wanna Bet. Hope everyone's New Year's weekend is off to a fantastic start. What a lineup of football, as we told you in the opening. We have 2 SEC teams involved in bowl games today, and of course, Georgia in the college football playoff. So let's talk about everything that's coming up on this football Saturday as we sign off on the old year and get ready for the new year. The Alabama Crimson Tide in New Orleans to play Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. The Tide is full strength with Bryce Young and Will Anderson deciding to play. That had a big consequence on the line for this game. Originally, 3.5 was the established number. When Young and Anderson declared they were in, that line jumped up to 6.5.
That's something you don't see every day. A double, basically, of the line. Alabama, a hefty favorite now against a scrappy Wildcat team who we last saw knocking off TCU to claim the Big 12 championship. So this is a conference champion that Alabama's up against today, and it should be a very interesting game. As far as the roster situation of the two teams, Alabama certainly has superior talent. Would much rather have the game at 3.5, but we told you a couple of weeks ago to jump on that if you could. And that's something we talked about, of course, in the Open. Case got all of his betting in early, as he is prone to do. So he has got a lot better line situation than if you buy it today. But still, Alabama with superior talent. And I think the fact that Young and Anderson are playing is a really good indicator that they are very serious, the entire team, the organization, university, about this game. I don't think you're going to see Alabama mailing it in or feeling sorry for themselves because they're not in the playoff. I think they have a chip on their shoulder and have something to prove. And I like Alabama despite the fact that the line has gone to 6.5. Let's take a look at the other SEC team in action in Nashville, the Music City Bowl. Kentucky very depleted and very disappointing this year. Other than Texas A&M, Kentucky probably the most disappointing team in the country. I still can't get over the lack of performance when they went to Knoxville and just got absolutely steamrolled by Tennessee. A big rivalry game for Kentucky, and they just didn't show up. All the hype about Will Levis going to be the first-round pick and the prototype quarterback, and he's just going to have a phenomenal year. And Mark Stoops, what a tremendous job he's done at Kentucky. A bunch of hokum, really. It was a lot of preseason hype and a lot of hoopla that really didn't prove out at all. And we were skeptical of this Kentucky team. If you go back and listen to our many shows and platforms, really tried to kind of advise people away from this team because every year they're filled with expectations, but they don't deliver very much in performance standpoint. So not shocked that Kentucky had a subpar year. I am surprised they were really as dreadful as they turned out to be. The biggest win they had was against Florida down in Gainesville, and Anthony Richardson was kind enough to toss 2 interceptions in the red zone to Kentucky to set that up. So Will Levis not playing, getting ready for the NFL. Rodriguez, the running back who's been there seemingly for 15 years, their star running back, he's also sitting this one out. And their other good running back talent, Cavassier Smoke, is in the transfer portal. So Kentucky very depleted. What you have here is a game against Iowa, a team that has a very solid defense, and Kentucky's defense has been fairly good all year. So 2 very challenged offenses against 2 pretty good defenses. Should be low scoring, but Iowa has more of their offensive players on the field and should be able to eke out a close win. I hate picking against the SEC, particularly when it's a Big Ten team, but I've got to give the 2 points and take Iowa here against Kentucky. Let's move on to Atlanta. The Peach Bowl, the semifinals of the college football playoff. Georgia 6.5 over Ohio State. If you listened to our last show, we told you that from a power rating standpoint in Las Vegas, this game should not be being played because Georgia and Ohio State all year have been either 1, 2, or 3 in that power ranking. TCU should be the opponent for Georgia based on those numbers, but that's not what we have because the committee obviously wanted to avoid an Ohio State-Michigan first-round matchup in a game that was just played about a month ago. And this is just my own conspiracy theory, but I think there are so many contingents around the country that are SEC whiplashed that would much rather see an all Big Ten final, as hideous as that would be. So let's hope that Georgia or TCU keeps us from that particular situation developing. Georgia has been flawless all year. They have shown a few signs of not great performance, but they always make up for it anytime they make a mistake or get into any kind of adversarial situation. It seems like they respond instantly. Stetson Bennett, so much experience, already a national championship. The two-headed monster tight ends, Bowers and Washington, phenomenal. Georgia's got A.D. Mitchell back, completely healthy, their deep threat receiver, and the defense has played extremely well all year. Ohio State really showed a lot of vulnerability to the passing game against Michigan, but they really weren't prepared for that, so we'll give them a little bit of a pass there. They certainly can score a lot of points, and we shall see how effective they'll be against the Georgia defense. I still think at the end of the day, Georgia has a lot more components and a lot more experience in these spots. I like the Bulldogs to go ahead and dispatch the Buckeyes and set up a possible second consecutive national championship for the Dogs and the SEC. Give the 6.5, go Dogs tonight in Atlanta. That's the report. I hope everybody has a safe, happy, wonderful football and New Year's Eve weekend. We'll be back next week to talk about the championship game and a whole lot more right here on Wanna Bet.